Hi, I am Ariqah. In this video, I'm going to talk about food security. What is the definition of food security? Food security is the measure of an individual's ability to access food that is nutritious and sufficient in quantity. Food security is a basic human right. In fact, having access to at least an adequate amount of nutritious food could be seen as the most basic of all human rights. Some definitions of food security specify that food must also meet an individual's food preferences and dietary needs for active and healthy lifestyles. What are the different levels of food security? The concept of food security can be broken down into four main components known as the four pillars of food security. The first is availability. Availability simply refers to the existence of food within a community. This is closely linked to the efficiency of food production. Availability can become an issue when there is a lack of necessary resources, such as water for irrigation, or when land being used for food production is damaged or degraded. The second one is access. Simply having enough food in a community means very little if there is poor access to it. True food security means that individuals have the resources they need to obtain a sufficient quantity of nutritious food. Access to food is affected by a myriad of physical, social, and policy-related factors. Factors such as pricing, household proximity to suppliers, and infrastructure all affect our access to food. The third one is utilization. Not all food is of equal or sufficient value. To be food secure, it is crucial that the food being accessed is of a good quality. It is paramount that food is nutritious and healthy enough to provide the energy people need for their daily activities. It is also crucial that individuals have the necessary knowledge and tools to properly utilize the food available to them. These includes having the utilities to properly select, prepare, and store foods that are available and accessible. The last one is stability. Good food stability means that access, availability, and utilization of food remains relatively stable over time. It is important to try to minimize any threats to this stability. Threats to food stability include natural disasters, climate change, conflict, and economic factors such as volatile price fluctuations. There are three major causes of food insecurity. The first one is conflict. Conflict stands out as the single biggest factor driving global hunger today. Over 60% of those who are food insecure are living in conflict zones. Conflict forces people to flee from their homes, often leaving behind their only means to a livelihood. Conflict also divides community and can cause farmers to abandon any long-term agriculture strategies for fear that they will never reap the benefits if they are forced to flee. The second one is climate change. After years of stagnation, the number of hungry people in the world rose between 2015 and 2018 by nearly 40 million people, with the greatest rise coming in drought-affected countries in sub-Saharan Africa. An increase in the frequency and severity of natural disasters has devastated some regions, destroying crop yields and limiting the quantity and the quality of food available to communities. The last one is population growth. According to the United Nations, the global population will be nearly 10 billion people by 2050. As the population continues to grow, it is necessary that food production and food accessibility grow to match it. Unfortunately, we have already seen in countries that have experienced population booms that resources needed for food production, water supply, croplands can become scarce when divided, causing food insecurity. So, what are the main threats to food security? Recently, the COVID-19 pandemic has threatened the food security of millions of people worldwide. Reduced incomes, increased unemployment, and higher food prices in many regions have greatly reduced access to food for those affected. Furthermore, necessary border restrictions and lockdowns brought in to stop the spread of COVID-19 have caused disruptions to the transportation and production of food. According to Food and Agriculture Organization, the number of food insecure people categorized as a crisis level or worse has potentially nearly doubled in 2020. The economic fallout of COVID-19 affects food production at all levels. We have seen disruptions to the financial liquidity of food producers, inflation of basic food items, and consumers with reduced incomes unable to meet this rise in prices. It is essential at this time that we work to protect those most at risk while laying the groundwork for a more stable and sustainable future. What happens when there is food insecurity? First, malnutrition. Malnutrition can be a devastating reality for those who are food insecure. This is not only because of those associated suffering, but also because it can lead to those affected becoming increasingly food insecure. Weakened muscle and cognitive issues associated with malnutrition and can make it near impossible for the individuals who are suffering to improve their situation or even to maintain their livelihoods. 2. Stunting. When a child doesn't receive the proper nutrition, particularly during their first 1,000 days from conception to their second birthday, they will likely suffer stunting. This means they will not mentally or physically develop to where they otherwise would, irreversibly damaging their well-being and prospects. This issue is all too common in countries affected by food insecurity. 3. Mental health issue. A recent study on food insecurity in Ethiopia found that those facing food insecurity were more likely to suffer from both depression and anxiety. Food insecurity is a terrible reality that is facing millions of people, but there are steps that we can take, both as individuals and as a collective, to reduce food insecurity and improve the quality of life of those currently affected. So how can we prevent food insecurity? First, building climate change resilience. Climate change and climate disasters are becoming increasingly devastating for those affected. Small farmers across our countries of work have experienced an increasing number of such events, including floods and droughts, which put their food supply and livelihood at risk. By helping farmers develop more sustainable and resilient agricultural practices, we can fight back against climate change. Diversifying crop production, improving irrigation, and promoting sustainability can lessen the impact of climate disasters while helping overall food production to increase. The second one is address inequalities of hunger. The impacts of conflict and hunger are fundamentally gendered. Women in food insecure regions frequently report experiencing gender-based violence as a direct or indirect result of conflict. These experiences are closely tied to their responsibilities for the production, collection, and preparation of food. The unequal allocation of food is just an example of the discrimination of women and girls face in crisis. By addressing this discrimination in both food and educational programs, we can help create a safer, more food-secure world for women and girls. The last one is conflict-sensitive relief. Conflict is the primary driver of food insecurity in the world and the greatest threat to a more stable, prosperous, and food-secure future. By creating conflict-sensitive approaches and ensuring that programs do not further exacerbate conflict, we can effectively prevent food insecurity from affecting those most in need. This requires a deep understanding of conflict dynamics at national and local levels, how they interact and shape one another, and how they can change. Crucially, it also requires an awareness of how programs can influence a conflict environment and willingness to act on this and adapt approaches where necessary. Thank you.